Hello, my name is Deborah, 36 years old, and my husband Gregory is 31. The age difference between us was hardly noticeable while we were dating, but it became a topic of concern when we decided to get married. When I first visited Gregory's parents at their rustic home in the Northeast, I was taken aback by their traditional, conservative views. They were initially quite skeptical about our relationship, mainly due to our age gap. I vividly recall their critical remarks such as, "An older wife is rare, but 5 years is quite a stretch. Can Deborah even have children at her age? Aren't her chances diminished?" These comments were harsh enough to turn away many, but the real challenge came from my mother-in-law's outright hostility. She flatly refused to accept our union, questioning why Gregory needed to marry someone 5 years his senior and worrying about the embarrassment of explaining this to friends. She feared Gregory would return home to take over the family business and believed my urban upbringing made me an unsuitable match. Gregory and I had been together for 5 years, and I had spent much of my late 20s with him. I was deeply committed to our relationship, and after living together for a while, the thought of starting over with someone else was too daunting. Frustrated, I pressed Gregory into proposing, and though he agreed, it seemed he did so with some reluctance. Perhaps because of his youth, he appeared content with how things were. When his parents opposed our engagement, he even wavered, suggesting it was too soon to marry. However, I stood firm, telling him and his parents that the age difference wouldn't change with time. With a calm demeanor, I addressed his parents, acknowledging, "Yes, I am older than Gregory, but that's beyond our control. I promise to do my utmost to prove myself as a dedicated daughter-in-law." Despite the challenges, I was determined to show that love and commitment are what truly matter in a marriage. Despite my initial hope for acceptance, Gregory's family's approval came with palpable reluctance. Even more challenging was Gregory's sister, who at our first meeting bluntly stated, "Just so you know, don't call me your sister-in-law. It's completely unacceptable for my brother to marry someone older than him." Looking back, I realize I was somewhat naive. I thought that my experience dealing with difficult clients in my professional life equipped me to handle personal conflicts as well. Little did I know this situation would teach me the true meaning of rude behavior that bordered on bullying. I had convinced myself that moving to the countryside to live near Gregory's parents wouldn't be as dreadful as the horror stories I'd read online. In hindsight, perhaps I should have called off the wedding, but as the saying goes, hindsight is 20/20ths. A year into the marriage, I deeply regretted my decision. Our day-to-day life and work routines remained largely unchanged after we formally registered our marriage, but a significant change was the increase in calls Gregory received from his mother. These conversations, which he took in another room or even the bathroom to spare me, were frequent and filled with implications. Despite our compact apartment, I couldn't help but overhear bits and pieces. It appeared they were discussing me, making assumptions that I opposed the idea of moving to Gregory's hometown to live with his parents, although that was far from the truth. When I had asked Gregory about the possibility of moving, he himself was hesitant, citing the lack of amenities like a nearby convenience store and scarce job opportunities as reasons. Yet, frustratingly, he seemed to use me as a scapegoat for his reluctance to move back. Just recently, I overheard Gregory saying in the next room, "So if I bring up divorce, I'd have to pay alimony, right?" His consideration of divorce seemed not to stem from any residual feelings for me, but rather from practical and financial considerations. This realization was disappointing and made it clear that my role in his narrative was more about convenience than commitment, casting me as the villain to cover up his hesitations. Hearing Gregory's true feelings was a bitter pill to swallow, and it nudged me towards seriously considering a divorce. Though we didn't have children to complicate matters, I kept these thoughts to myself for the time being. Amidst this personal turmoil, I received news of Gregory's sister's upcoming wedding, which demanded our presence back at his family home for a grand celebration, contrasting sharply with our modest wedding dinner. Gregory's sister was marrying someone from a neighboring city, and their wedding was planned as a lavish affair at a local venue. All relatives were expected to travel there by chartered bus on the wedding day. Our arrival at Gregory's family home the day before turned the place into a bustling hub filled with arriving relatives and preparations in full swing. The wedding ceremony was scheduled for the afternoon of a 3-day weekend, allowing us to mingle and participate fully. While venue staff helped with dresses and suits at the house, highlighting the scale of the event, I found myself changing into a carefully chosen dress, setting my hair, and applying makeup to ensure I looked the part. Despite our simpler nuptials, I was determined to blend in and fulfill my social duties with grace. My father-in-law, perhaps seeing my efforts to integrate, called out for me to serve refreshments to the waiting guests. With a professional smile, I took on the role, introducing myself as Gregory's wife and encouraging guests to enjoy the snacks, echoing the confidence of a seasoned TV host. Despite my mother-in-law's suggestion to stay out of the way in Gregory's room, I was committed to making a good impression and actively participated in the gathering. My presence was a mix of duty and defiance, an attempt to prove myself amidst the complex dynamics of Gregory's family. As the bus arrived to ferry us to the wedding venue, the air was thick with excitement, and I boarded with the relatives, ready to face the day with a determined smile, even as thoughts of my marital discord lingered in the back of my mind. As I was about to join the others on the bus, my mother-in-law stopped me with a shout. "Wait a minute, Deborah. I forgot the pearl necklace. Could you fetch it for me?" In my formal attire, I hesitated, but she insisted, saying, "It's in the top drawer of the dresser in my room. It was my mother's. Please hurry." "Understood, I'll look for it now," I responded, trying to mask my reluctance. I rushed to her room and began rummaging through the cluttered drawer. The necklace wasn't immediately visible, and my anxiety grew as I heard the bus engine start. After a tense 10 minutes, I finally found a box that seemed right. I grabbed it and rushed to the door, only to see the bus pulling away, with every member of Gregory's family on board, including him. "You've got to be kidding!" I blurted out, stunned. The bus was now out of sight, and a wave of realization hit me. I'd left my cell phone and wallet in my bag, which was already on the bus. Stranded without a way to contact Gregory or even catch a taxi, a mix of despair and frustration washed over me. I pondered my next move. My initial eagerness to attend the wedding had vanished. It was more than just being forgotten. It felt like a deliberate act. The pain of being left behind felt like a reflection of my standing in this family. Hurt and angered, the idea of a simple divorce suddenly seemed insufficient. I wanted them to feel a fraction of the neglect they'd shown me. After some thought, I crafted a plan. With a newly composed smile and a calm exterior, I stepped outside, ready to put my scheme into action. This wedding day was about to take a turn, and I was at the helm of what would come next. When the relatives, in-laws, and Gregory returned from the wedding around 6 p.m., they were all noticeably intoxicated. By that time, I had packed all my belongings, except for the bag that had traveled with them on the bus. I had managed to find a taxi company's number in a phone book and placed a call from the in-laws' home phone, arranging for a taxi to pick me up in 25 minutes. Everything was set for my departure. As they disembarked from the bus, I greeted them with a feigned smile of innocence. Gregory's face registered guilt when he saw me, but he remained silent. My in-laws barely acknowledged my presence, too busy bidding farewell to departing relatives. The other relatives threw me sympathetic glances before driving away. Deep down, I hoped Gregory would offer some kind of apology, but true to his nature, he said nothing. With a forced smile, I welcomed Gregory back. He seemed visibly relieved, but quickly began making excuses. "I didn't realize you weren't on the bus. I felt bad, but the ceremony had started, so I couldn't come back for you." I ignored his excuses and began rummaging through the luggage for my bag, my actions silently broadcasting my disbelief. I finally turned to him and with a mix of sarcasm and hurt said, "Divorce? Is this some kind of joke? Because it certainly feels like one. Realizing the gravity of what I'd said, Gregory began to panic. Surprisingly, his first reaction was to trivialize the situation. Who knows? I'm surprised you think such a petty lie would work. So what if you weren't noticed? Are you saying you forgot I existed until you saw me? It was then that my father-in-law, after saying goodbye to the last of the relatives, chimed in dismissively, "Come on, it was just a little forgetfulness on both sides. Is Gregory talking about divorce over something like this? City brides are spineless." His words made it clear he saw the situation as trivial and even seemed to support the idea of a divorce. My mother-in-law, overhearing the conversation, smirked and added, "I knew it. A city bride just doesn't fit in. She was never right for our family." Her words and hypocrisy stung deeply, fueling my resolve. Faced with their blatant disregard and disrespect, my decision became clearer than ever. I was more determined to follow through with my plan, not just for escape, but as a stand against their dismissive and cruel attitudes. If that was their true sentiment, they might as well have invited only Gregory to the wedding. Why bother having me travel all this way if they planned to leave me behind? Any bride, whether from the city or the countryside, would find such treatment appalling. During a heated exchange, my mother-in-law retorted sharply, "We never intended to invite you in the first place. There wasn't even a seat prepared for you. Gregory brought you along by mistake, so we left you behind." I was stunned by her blatant honesty. As I glared in disbelief, Gregory avoided my gaze and shifted the blame to his mother, awkwardly explaining, "Well, Mom didn't explicitly say to come alone, so I assumed it meant as a couple." Her anger was unyielding. "And why did you go around serving tea and introducing yourself as the bride?" At the venue, relatives were asking why the wife didn't show up, not even realizing Gregory was married. It made us look foolish. "That's your own fault, and it's absurd to say I shouldn't introduce myself," I shot back, feeling my efforts to be recognized as Gregory's wife had inadvertently caused a stir. "So, you never intended to acknowledge me and planned to divorce me eventually? That's why you kept our wedding a secret from the relatives and made it seem like just a dinner party?" I confronted them, the tension thick in the air. Neither my father-in-law nor my mother-in-law responded, their silence a tacit confirmation of my suspicions. It was crystal clear that cutting ties with this family was the right choice. "Fine, I'll grant your wish and divorce you. I'm better off without a hostile family and an unreliable husband," I declared resolutely. I boarded the taxi that had just arrived, taking the last train back to my city apartment. Unable to sleep that night, I impulsively searched for divorce lawyers online and began packing my belongings, keeping myself busy until dawn. The resolve to start anew, away from the negativity and betrayal, fueled my actions through the night. When I woke up late the next morning, I discovered several missed calls from Gregory and my in-laws on my phone. The actions I had taken were starting to resonate with them. After being left behind, I meticulously crafted a plan for revenge, making sure to keep within the bounds of safety and legality. I wasn't content to simply divorce and fade away quietly. I remembered how much my mother-in-law valued the opinions of their neighbors, which gave me an idea. There were heaps of unused refreshments and snacks left over from the wedding festivities, and I decided to put them to use. With a bag full of leftover treats, I went around the neighborhood greeting everyone with a warm smile. "Hello, I'm Gregory's wife," I announced, taking the opportunity to share my story about how I was treated and deliberately left behind on the wedding day. That evening, my mother-in-law and I ended up having a loud argument right outside, in earshot of many curious neighbors. This public display was a perfectly crafted form of revenge against a family so deeply concerned with their public image. Eventually, Gregory and I proceeded with the divorce. It went through without any significant complications. The stories I had shared with the neighbors were framed as casual, innocent conversations, which protected me from any potential accusations of defamation. With the assistance of a lawyer, I was able to claim compensation for the abandonment and secured a satisfactory settlement. As for my sister-in-law, her marriage began to fall apart soon after. It turned out she had masked her challenging personality just long enough to get married. However, people rarely change. Her true nature soon surfaced and her marriage deteriorated quickly. Within just 7 months, she had divorced and returned to her parents' home. By then, the story of how I was abandoned had spread far and wide, becoming a notorious rumor in the community. Over time, my in-laws gained an unsavory reputation as a family that mistreated their daughter-in-law, which led them to lead a much more subdued life. This tarnished reputation significantly dampened Gregory's prospects of finding a new bride in his hometown. I learned all of this from a neighbor whom I had befriended during my brief time there. We exchanged phone numbers, and she kept me updated. For me, it felt like perfect justice had been served. The divorce marked a new beginning in my life. I regretted not recognizing the true nature of Gregory and his family sooner. But now, with a clearer perspective, I saw the entire ordeal as a valuable lesson for my future. Perhaps I should have pulled away at the first signs of their initial opposition, but back then I was younger and more naive. Despite everything, I didn't want to completely disregard the happy moments we shared. Thus, I view the past year not just with resentment, but as a crucial learning experience. I'm relieved to have resolved the situation and moved on, stronger and wiser from the experience.